The calm before the storm. The village of Black Hollow was the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. Nestled deep within a dense forest, surrounded by rolling hills and shrouded in perpetual mist, it was a place untouched by the chaos of the modern world. The villagers were simple folk, their lives governed by tradition and superstition. They spoke in hushed tones of the old ways, of spirits that roamed the woods, and of the curse that had plagued Black Hollow for generations. But to outsiders, it was just another quiet, picturesque village, a place where nothing ever happened. Or so they thought. The story begins on a cold, gray morning in late October. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the villagers moved about their daily routines with a sense of unease. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that something was about to happen. And then it did. It started with the disappearance of young Emily Carter. Emily was a bright, cheerful girl of 12, with a love for exploring the woods and a curiosity that often got her into trouble. When she failed to return home one evening, the villagers organized a search party. They combed the forest, calling her name, but there was no sign of her. The only clue they found was a single tattered red ribbon, tied to a low-hanging branch deep in the woods. The ribbon was old, its color faded, and it bore a strange symbol, a circle with a cross inside, like the mark of some ancient, forgotten god. The villagers whispered among themselves, their faces pale with fear. They knew what the symbol meant. It was the mark of the Hollow Man, a figure from local legend said to haunt the woods and claim the souls of the unwary. As the days passed, more strange occurrences began to plague the village. Livestock were found mutilated in the fields, their bodies arranged in grotesque patterns. Shadows moved in the corners of people's vision, and at night, the sound of distant laughter echoed through the streets. The villagers locked their doors and windows, but they knew it wouldn't be enough. The Hollow Man was coming. The Whispering Woods. The forest surrounding Black Hollow had always been a place of mystery and danger. The villagers called it the Whispering Woods, for it was said that the trees themselves could speak, their voices carrying on the wind like the murmurs of the dead. Few dared to venture deep into the woods, and those who did often returned changed, their eyes hollow and their minds broken. It was into these woods that young Emily had disappeared, and it was here that the search party now found themselves, their lanterns casting flickering shadows on the gnarled trees. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew colder, and the sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, faded away, leaving only an eerie silence. Then they heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like the sound of a branch knocking against a window. It seemed to come from all around them, growing louder with each passing moment. The search party froze, their breath visible in the cold air. One of the men, a burly farmer named Thomas, stepped forward, his lantern held high. "Who's there?" he called, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only the tapping, which now seemed to be coming from above. Thomas looked up, and his blood ran cold. Hanging from the branches were dozens of red ribbons, each one bearing the same strange symbol as the one they had found earlier. And beneath them, swaying gently in the breeze, was a figure, a man, or what was left of him. His body was emaciated, his skin pale and stretched tight over his bones. His eyes were sunken, his mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. He wore tattered clothes that seemed to blend into the shadows, and his long, bony fingers tapped against the tree trunk in a steady, hypnotic rhythm. The search party screamed and ran, their lanterns casting wild, dancing shadows as they fled through the woods. But no matter how fast they ran, the tapping followed them, growing louder and more insistent, until it seemed to be inside their heads. When they finally emerged from the woods, they were changed. Their eyes were wide with terror, their faces pale and drawn. They spoke of the Hollow Man, of his smile, and of the way he had seemed to beckon to them, as if inviting them to join him in the shadows. The Curse of Black Hollow. The villagers gathered in the town square, their faces grim. They knew that the Hollow Man was no mere legend. He was real, and he had returned to claim what was his. But why now? What had awakened him from his slumber? The answer lay in the village's past, in a story so old that it had been all but forgotten. Long ago, Black Hollow had been a thriving community, its people prosperous and content. But their wealth had come at a price. The villagers had made a pact with the Hollow Man, offering him sacrifices in exchange for his protection. For a time, the arrangement had worked. The village flourished, and the Hollow Man remained in the shadows, his hunger sated. But then, the villagers had grown greedy. They had broken the pact, refusing to make the required sacrifices. In his anger, the Hollow Man had cursed the village, vowing to return one day and claim his due. The villagers had tried to forget the curse, to bury it deep in their memories. But now it had resurfaced, and they knew that they could no longer ignore it. They had to find a way to appease the Hollow Man, or risk losing everything. The ritual. The village elders gathered in the church, their faces solemn. They knew what had to be done. The only way to lift the curse was to perform the ritual, a dark, ancient ceremony that would require a great sacrifice. The ritual was to take place at midnight, in the heart of the Whispering Woods. The villagers gathered around a stone altar, their faces pale and their hands trembling. At the center of the altar was a young girl, chosen by lot. She was to be the sacrifice, her blood the key to appeasing the Hollow Man. As the elders began the ritual, the air grew thick with tension. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches twisting and writhing like the arms of some great, malevolent beast. The girl on the altar began to scream, her voice echoing through the woods. And then, he appeared. The Hollow Man emerged from the shadows, his grotesque smile wider than ever. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace, his eyes fixed on the girl. The villagers watched in horror as he approached the altar, his bony fingers reaching out to claim his prize. But then, something unexpected happened. The girl's screams turned to laughter, high and piercing. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and her body began to twist and contort, her limbs elongating, her skin turning pale and stretched. The villagers realized too late that they had made a terrible mistake. The girl was not the sacrifice, she was the vessel. The Hollow Man had chosen her to be his new form, to walk among the living once more. The endless night. The village of Black Hollow was never the same after that night. The Hollow Man, now in his new form, walked among the villagers, his presence a constant reminder of their folly. The woods grew darker, the shadows deeper, and the whispers louder. One by one, the villagers began to disappear, their bodies never found. Those who remained lived in constant fear, their lives ruled by the Hollow Man's whims. They knew that there was no escape, no way to break the curse. And so, the village of Black Hollow became a place of silence and shadows, a place where the past and the present merged, and where the line between the living and the dead blurred. The Hollow Man's laughter echoed through the streets, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. As for the villagers, they could only wait, their eyes fixed on the woods, knowing that one day, the Hollow Man would come for them too. And so, the haunting mysteries of Black Hollow remained, hidden in the quiet village, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The Forgotten Journal. Weeks had passed since the ritual, and the village of Black Hollow was a shadow of its former self. The streets were empty, the windows shuttered, and the air thick with dread. The Hollow Man, now inhabiting the body of the sacrificed girl, roamed freely, his laughter echoing through the night. The villagers had retreated into their homes, praying for salvation but knowing none would come. It was during this time that Sarah, the village schoolteacher, stumbled upon something that might change everything. While cleaning out the attic of the old schoolhouse, she found a dusty, leather-bound journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The journal belonged to Elias Blackwood, the village's founder, and it contained detailed accounts of the original pact with the Hollow Man. Sarah's hands trembled as she flipped through the brittle pages. The journal spoke of a way to banish the Hollow Man, but it required a great sacrifice, not of blood, but of memory. The villagers would have to willingly give up their memories of the Hollow Man, erasing him from their minds and, in doing so, severing his connection to the living world. But there was a catch. The ritual would also erase all memories of the village itself, leaving the villagers as strangers to one another, their shared history wiped clean. It was a desperate solution, but Sarah knew it might be their only hope. She gathered the remaining villagers in the church, her voice shaking as she read aloud from the journal. The room was silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Could they truly give up everything they knew, everything they were, to be free of the Hollow Man? The gathering storm. The villagers debated for hours, their voices rising in fear and frustration. Some argued that the ritual was too great a price to pay, while others insisted it was their only chance for survival. As the night wore on, the tension grew, and the Hollow Man's laughter echoed louder than ever, as if he knew what they were planning. Finally, a decision was reached. They would perform the ritual at dawn, in the heart of the Whispering Woods. Sarah, as the one who had discovered the journal, would lead the ceremony. The villagers prepared in silence, their faces pale and drawn, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what they were about to lose. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the villagers gathered around the stone altar. Sarah stood at the center, the journal in her hands, her voice steady as she began to chant the ancient words. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches twisting and writhing like the arms of some great, malevolent beast. The Hollow Man appeared, his grotesque smile wider than ever. He moved toward the altar, his eyes fixed on Sarah, but she stood her ground, her voice growing louder, more insistent. The villagers joined in, their voices rising in unison, their memories of the Hollow Man, of Black Hollow, of each other, slipping away with each word. The vanishing. The ritual reached its climax, the air crackling with energy. The Hollow Man let out a deafening scream, his form flickering and distorting as the villagers' memories faded. The trees shook, the ground trembled, and the sky darkened, as if the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. And then, silence. The villagers stood in the clearing, their faces blank, their eyes empty. They looked at one another, but there was no recognition, no memory of the lives they had shared. The Hollow Man was gone, his connection to the living world severed, but so too was the village of Black Hollow. The villagers wandered aimlessly, their minds a blank slate, their identities erased. The forest reclaimed the village, the buildings crumbling into ruin, the streets overgrown with weeds. Black Hollow became a ghost town, its name forgotten, its history lost to time.